I'll get Goodwin up here. We're going to talk about what we learned this weekend. So give Goodwin a round of applause, please.
Thank you, Rich. How many people went to Pete's class this past weekend? Good, good. So tonight is going to be takeaways from Pete. I'm going to share some of my takeaways and other things that I've done with Pete as well. So let me give you an example. Or let me give you some background history first. So from January of 1980 to April of 2020, I've always been either a wage slave, which means that I had a W-2 job, or I was an independent consultant, which means I still traded my time for money, but I got a lot of money for my time. So April of 2020, that's when COVID hit the company I was working at. And I was part of what they call a reduction in force, RIF. So that is a fancy name for a layoff, but a layoff where you do hundreds of people all at one time. So unlike the rest of my teammates, I was happy because from that January 1980 timeframe to the April 2020, I was doing things in real estate. Very, very slowly, but I was taking steps, small steps. And over that course of time, very lengthy steps at that. But when that happened, that allowed me to not go back to a W-2 job again. So what did I do? So April of 2020, no longer constrained by a manager having to approve my time off, of which I basically had only about 2 weeks anyway. I was able to do all the education I wanted. So what does that mean? I think the first class that I did was in August of 2020 when I went to go see Pete in Columbus. And that's when I learned how to do raps. That's where finally things kind of light bulb goes on. One of the other things that I learned from Pete is how to use not only what you have, but use the things that other people have. So as you can tell, I'm having problems speaking, but I want to relate this story, and then I want to have other people come up and also talk about what they learned from Pete. And then we will discuss how to apply it. So fast forward, I had recently done a deal where there were a couple parties involved. I had no deal. I had no money. Yet I got to be part of the deal. And the other parties had the deal, had the money. So what were they missing? Someone want to take some guesses?
Time.
What was that?
Time.
Time? They had the time. I didn't get myself into another job. More guesses.
Someone who could structure it. Someone who could structure it.
Structure? I didn't have to do anything special.
Someone,
They have the money.
someone to link both,
Connector?
someone to connect both, you know, the one with the money and the one with the.
They had the deal and they had the money.
They didn't have the experience then. Oh, here's one right here too. My water is.
You did the paperwork. You did the paperwork? Oh my goodness.
Nope, no paperwork except signatures.
So they have the deal. And they were missing the deal.
Yeah. So, before we did this deal, I had the practice of going through the motions of an earlier deal. One person had the deal, one person had the money, I had something, the other two didn't have.
Yeah, the experience, the knowledge.
Everyone in this case had experience and knowledge. So I'm going to show you something that I learned from Pete. Partners comes in all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds, and they all have resources that you don't know about. This is why Pete says, meet with people, talk with them, ask them what they're looking for, and you help them find those things. Could be other people, like I met someone that I was able to refer to Darren. Darren got a deal done. In this case, the previous experience is where I have a very clean and high credit score. I didn't have any money, and I didn't have the deal. But the other person, one person had the deal. The other person had money, but terrible credit. And same thing with the person who had the deal. Terrible credit and no money. So that first deal didn't go through because the person who had the deal wanted more of the deal, right? So you basically have three parties who are pretty much equal, right? One person has a deal, has no money, has no credit. What do they truly have? Nothing. Person with money has no deal and has terrible credit. They also have nothing. I also had nothing, but I had great credit. The combination of that could make the deal work. And we were ready to sign, but instead of doing a three-way equal deal, that person now wanted half of the deal. Go ahead, take your half of that deal. And the rest of us will sit this one out. And then let's see how much you actually have. So he couldn't get the deal done. So he learned from that one. So fast forward. So I help a club member swing a deal of 5 properties. I think 2 or 3 were already cash flowing. The other 2 needed work. So all I had to do, give blood, sign a bunch of paperwork. They weren't sure my credit score was that high, so they asked me to give blood again and more snapshots of my IRA accounts, things like that. So we closed last week. The seller apparently is selling off their entire portfolio, over 100 properties. So with this first 5, once we get these stabilized, the next group will be 9. And I would do the same thing. Give blood, sign, and show what I have left in my IRAs, which, by the way, are mostly invested. So I became a full partner just using credit. No money. Not a single penny into the deal at all. And I will be getting money from this for as long as we have the properties. That's one lesson that I learned from Pete.
In 2020.
All right, starting in 2020. That I only got to use now. What did I learn from Pete this weekend that I didn't know before? Who knows what section 121 is?
Section 121 is when you own your primary residence for at least 2 out of the last 5 years, and you could get up to $250,000 tax-free per owner.
Or up to 500 if you're married, right?
Per owner. So there's 3, then it's $250 each as well.
Right, this is where,
Famous threesome that Andy mentioned.
right?
Or 4, or however, yeah.
Okay. So Pete mentioned this weekend something that I didn't know about. and it actually got repeated here, my original understanding. Everyone who is on title, right? Okay. So the example that Pete brought up, parents bought a house for, I guess, a son, married couple. They made the payments. They lived in the house. They did, paid all the bills. They did all the work. They obviously lived there. They're not untitled. The parents were untitled. Through what is known as the benefits and burden, where you basically show you live there, which is part of the requirement. You were paying the expenses, you're paying the mortgage, you're just doing everything, you're just not untitled. From my original knowledge, if you're not untitled and you're not living there, 121 doesn't apply to you. And the people who live there don't apply to them either. So Pete said to the CPA who was helping them, I'm sorry you missed the class in which they covered title. And I guess he said the same thing to their attorney as well. So he called an attorney friend, who some of us know, John Heyer, and got from John Heyer to write a nice letter to the other attorney, reminding them that next time you should not skip these classes. And what 121 allows you to do. I never knew that. And that's just a slight nuance that I picked up this weekend. So what's going to happen? Some of you have taken me up on my offer to go out and speak with your sellers, buyers, try and work out negotiations on getting a deal done. Someday, I will be sitting there. There will be someone who bought the property and someone who's not on title. And I will say, I can make something wonderful happen to you in this situation. I can make the sale of this property a tax-free, up to $250,000, depending on who was it that was actually living there, per person. And of course, I will still check with Pete and also John Heyer for this particular circumstance to see if that works. So I paid $500 something for this class this weekend. And this is probably since 2020, maybe the 14th time that I've seen Pete. Did I get my money's worth? Yes. Yes. Just from the one deal that I did, that's going to pay for all the classes I ever did with Pete. For this future deal, if it ever turns up, I will save someone upwards of $250,000 per person. And what I will get out of that deal, I don't know yet. But most likely, I will be able to negotiate for part of the deal as well. So these are the things that you learn from what I have posted about Pete, where he is arguably the most creative deal structure in the United States. And he was here this past weekend. Do you know how many requests Pete gets to have him speak somewhere? Dozens and dozens. On the West Coast, I don't think he teaches anywhere else. 2 years in a row, he's taught here. He normally teaches in Tampa, Florida. He will speak in other locations. Ohio and Las Vegas. These are two that I know of. But he will only teach in certain places. So once in a while in Ohio, but mostly Tampa. But now 2 years in a row, he has taught here. Not just speak, taught here. And before Pete, we had John Schaub here. He only teaches in Florida, and he will make appearances in other places as well. And he taught here. And this was the first time that I've taken his class. So I'm waiting to apply things that I learned from John on a deal. So not only did I make money, and I've covered all my education, other people are going to benefit, right? Because we now have multiple tools in our tool belt. Bill Cook was on L.A. Ria's session last night talking about options. And Bill is offering 3 classes, the first of which is happening right now. So I get to miss out on those. But fortunately, I've taken Bill's class a number of times too. So today's exchanger session we had options up on the board. We had a financial calculator war going on. So all this education that we provide here, that we recommend from people, and we're very fortunate because we have people who actually teach those things. Because things like the financial calculator, I can tell you out of being in RIAs, so Real Estate Investors Associations and clubs and Phoebes, for investors, by investors, meetups, things like that. Very, very few places have the level of education that we try and provide here. For 5 years that I was in Ohio, we had one person teach financial calculator. The only thing they taught was how to discount a note, not how to go ahead and play what if scenarios. In Arizona, where I was for 13 years, they never mentioned a financial calculator. So not only do we have Andy, who teaches the class here, and Rich has taught it, and many, many people now know it well enough to where they could teach it as well. We have LA RIA, Bill Tan, who comes here often, and he teaches financial calculator. So we try and provide a wealth of education here, and I hope you take advantage of it. And I hope you do spend some time helping out, volunteering, because this is how we're able to go and do those things. There's only so much that we as volunteers can do ourselves. So the more we raise the level of everyone else, the more deals we can do too. And the more deals that you know how to do and have done and have benefit from, the better deals we can do. Okay, I'd like to try and save my voice a little bit. Who would like to come up and kind of share some takeaways from this weekend's class? Okay, who has questions about this weekend's class? I know I have questions about some of the material.
I wanted to go over the examples he gave about borrowing with real estate to lower your interest rate costs. Like the example he gave, we said I bought a house I didn't want, so I could borrow money against it or make a note out of it. Yes, that part.
Yeah.
That's why you give me that look. That part. Yeah. That part.
I'd like to know more about that myself. So everyone who has come to our exchanger session has inevitably seen my 1031 target, and I got that from Pete. And there are multiple pieces involved with that. I probably had seen Pete maybe 4 times before I got to really begin to understand the pieces involved with doing that deal, where he's stacking multiple techniques together. So the one that you're bringing up, I'm thinking, ooh, that's pretty cool. I'd really like to learn how to do that and lower my cost of
72?
Okay, so next year when Pete comes, you ask him about that, and we'll all learn again together. Because that one, yeah, I was taking pictures, taking notes, but I don't fully understand all of it.
Maybe when all of us play cash game, we'll be able to figure it out together. I'm hoping so.
So that'll tell you. And by the way, the piece that I shared about the section 121, where you don't have to be untitled to be able to reap the benefits of that, that's not in the book.
Yeah.
So Andy often talks about the three things, the three meetings that occurs at an event. One is the actual class that's taught from the book. One is the class that the instructor actually teaches from verbally covering the material and providing examples that are not in the book. The last one is when you're networking with other people and finding out from their experiences. So I encourage you to spend the money on the education, because we are vetting good education for everyone here. Not all the education has to be that expensive. Not all the education has to be in other places. Why can't we have good education here? And this is what Rich has done with this club. Nobody else gets Pete. Nobody else gets John. So, okay, how about another example?
Loan constant. Talk about loan constant.
Loan constant.
The class.
Well,
Should have more answers or questions.
the
Yeah.
biggest takeaway from the whole weekend for me was that the deal is never.
You know, I think you should come up here.
The biggest takeaway for me for the whole weekend was that the deal is never done. If two people want to get the deal done, there's a way. And just what he talked about, as far as not just considering the buyer and the seller, but all the other, I guess, ancillary pieces of the deal, like what the person's going to do with the money, how the lender is involved, how the agent is involved. Like, it's not just the buyer and seller. If each person can benefit from the deal in just the smallest way, like, it makes everything better. And then it makes those people want to work with you. Because what did he say? Like, he's done, I forgot, but a lot of his deals he's done with just 4 families, or like 4, and like those people's relatives and their friends. So like, if you just think about ways it can benefit everyone, like, it always comes back to you, and the deal is never done. There's always a way to get it done. So that was the biggest, and like, he gave, on that one deal, he gave us what, like, I mean, I lost count. Wasn't it like 11 pages, like 11 different scenarios where, yeah.
There's at least 15.
Yeah, there was 15. So he just gave us all different kind of scenarios, and each one was a little different to get the deal done. So yeah, like that was the biggest takeaway of the weekend for me.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, the number was something like 71 transactions from 4 families.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
That's a lot of transactions. If just take a guess at what the average transaction might have been and multiply it by 71. Now, considering that this is over the course of 60 years, some of them are going to be less expensive, i.e. not California prices. That's still a lot of money out of 4 families. And why 4 families? Because when Pete did the deal with the first one, they were comfortable with him. He solved their problem. And not with a hammer, but with finesse. They solved the problem. He solved their problem exactly the way they needed to have that problem solved. And then the next one was done the same way.